Hey YouTubers, Cheap Dad here. I have my 2007 Expedition that won't start. It cranks, it doesn't start. And I've checked the relays for the fuel pump. I've checked the fuel filter. It's just a dead pump, which happens after 200,000. It's pretty common in these, but so technically you're supposed to drop the tank, which I'm too lazy to do. And it's so old and not worth it. I'm just going to cut an access hole under the back seat to do the job. And the disclaimer is you wouldn't do this normally, but I'm cheap and I don't have time and or the manpower to get a heavy tank off. This thing just died in the driveway and we have a slope. And I've tried beating on the gas tank while starting just to get the pump to spin again, but don't have much luck there. So here you can see I've taken the two back seats out and just threw them in the back. This is the third row, regular Expedition. Fuel pumps are cheap on Amazon. But what I wanted to do today though is tell you kind of a little bit more about where I'm going to cut. I've seen some videos, but basically, you know, get the seats out, the two behind the driver's side. So the middle two behind the driver's side. And it leaves you with the bolt holes where they attach. The middle one was a little harder to get out. They have like 6 bolts. I don't know why. They're need to be so secure. But and if you feel like cleaning your carpet while you're at it, great, do it. This thing's so old, I decided it's like either I do this hack or I sell this thing for a lot, you know, just getting rid of it because it doesn't run, but I felt it's worth it. So I basically cut the carpet here and just made a flap. And really, I would say from the back seat, you're about 1.5 feet down. It's really near where the carpet was from the factory. Under the back seat is where you're going to start. And you'll see that there's 3 lines. There's this one, and then there's 2 over here. I kind of drew a black line where I'm going to actually do the cutting. You know, just like this. I've seen a couple other videos. I'm just going to cut pretty much a square foot out of this thing. I'm not going to cut the whole thing, just going to make it become a flap so I can fix it later. This bolt hole here is the only one that you may lose stability on, but you still have the 3 I'm not going to cut. That's still solid for the seat to bolt into. If I can't somehow get this one to work again, I'm not worried about it. Again, it's an old Expedition. 3 out of 4 isn't bad to hold a seat up. But that's just my disclaimer. I'm also going to use my handy dandy Rockwell vibrating reciprocal. I do have a sheet metal blade here. And I might use this curved one. Just depends, you know, how I want to try to get rid of this, cut this sheet metal. It's a little trickier in here. There's a kind of a thicker metal piece I've seen after somebody cut that you'll have to get through, but the rest is pretty thin sheet metal. And you get a couple inches distance down to the fuel tank. So there's not that much worry about puncturing your tank. Just be careful not to go down very deep at all. And I think that the reciprocals don't throw as many sparks as a round blade on a saw or something. So that's what I'm going to try. I'm going to keep you updated here with my progress. Okay, I wanted to point out a couple more things. Let me reverse the camera here. So a couple things I found out was this blade, this type of a blade is better for this job, the rounded kind, than that kind, because this kind I still feel like you push in too deep as you're cutting, where this one you can kind of just ride along. And you'll notice that with this blade, and this whole line only took me about 3 minutes to cut or less, but this blade was kind of all over the place, and I felt like it would puncture a little too deep for my comfort. And then I started picking it up right about here, and it was just like cutting through bread or butter with a knife, in a way. So that's tip number one. The other tip is using a drill very gently. I kind of did some probing holes just to make sure, this is the really thin sheet metal and there's no supporting metal underneath. And so I kind of went around on that line I talked about. And I did discover in here that there is some kind of another plate here. I only thought there's a plate here for the seat, but I see there's something else here. However, if you cut shallow enough, this sheet metal will still lift up from there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut thin through there, and then I'll give you some more pointers when I'm done with that. Also, I wanted to mention, you should probably have some gloves because sheet metal can be sharp. Remember, we're not supposed to be doing this. I'm not advising it as a repair, but if you just don't want to deal with this and you're cheap like me, this is what I'm doing. Maybe some ear protection as well, since these can get kind of loud on the metal. And then a vacuum, to get up all your little metal bits. And you're going to need a vacuum anyway when you get to the fuel pump, because we'll want to vacuum really well before we replace it with a new one. Also, you can begin to feel it's just super thin, except for the spots that have a plate backing. So we'll just be battling the backing until we can get under there and pry it up. Probably where these are tack welds or something, I'll have to break those off, but keep updating as I go. This line only took like 1 minute. Also, it's a good excuse to use the Rockwell. It's like I find very few things to use with these. I did some like trim in the house with stuff like that. But they are kind of handy, especially in this case where you just want to go really shallow around here. So I'm about done here, and I'm going to start tackling the tack welds and these braces. I don't know what this is from the factory. It feels like metal, but when I cut it, the dust is different here, so it's probably an epoxy or resin or something from the factory. Okay, so I'm still dealing with these like 8 tacks. And you can see that the sheet metal is tacked to another piece under there, but you can also see the good old fuel pump sitting there. Just need to figure this last part out here without hurting myself. It's thin and sharp, so wear gloves. Okay, so I just took a bigger drill bit and I drilled into each one of those tacks, hoping that as I pound these out, or not pound, but lift up, it kind of breaks right there at the drill hole, and we're good. Okay, YouTube, I ran into some problems on the way. It's a little different than I thought compared to an EL expedition that I was watching. Basically, this bar is sitting here and it's very thick metal compared to the others. After cutting this, I realized that it was a really thick bar for the seat support. So I had to cut it out with my Sawzall. I used like an old license plate to put as a barrier between the gas tanks so I wouldn't hit it. It worked out really well. I'll probably just epoxy this back in maybe do a little plate with some self-tapping screws. Like I said, 3 out of 4 bolts is okay for the seat for me. But voila, guys, we have, and gals, we have access to the fuel pump. Should be easy, quick now. And okay, we're back. It's been a couple days. I took a break. Basically now the last steps are to unhook this, and there's this little orange pin that pops out. Well, it comes out to the right. There's some little tab you push while you're pushing to the right. Use a little screwdriver to get to that. There's another one up there you want to take out and vacuum this really well before you start. This here you push and pull off. Really simple. These here, so I'm just going to tell you how to do them and then I'm going to do them. You push on you push against the line with your fingers, and then you put a small screwdriver in and pull it out to get these off. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and let's put a new pump in. Okay, I got the old fuel pump out and was looking at it, and I noticed that there's some kind of burning, probably one of the reasons it went out, but again, 200,000, wow, it's a long time. Really smells, so if you're pulling it out and it's raining out and you have the windows open, don't do that. Make sure you have good ventilation. And another thing I wanted to show you is I get this brand off Amazon, A Premium. I've had a few vehicles and I've gotten a lot of parts from them, maybe 10 or more different parts from this company, and they're really inexpensive and pretty good quality. So check that out. Make sure if you have a standard Expedition like me, I have an Eddie Bauer, that you get the one that is not 131 inches. There's 2 different pumps and they're very different, 2 inches height-wise different. The other one, the 131 inch, obviously wheelbase, is the EL version of the Expedition. So don't get that one unless you have an EL. And if you have an EL, it'll be a little different inside where you cut that crossbar I was talking about. So let's go have a look at my epoxy job. Okay, so after the pump's in, I just put the flap of metal back down. It doesn't go in quite right, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be under the carpet. So the grooves and things that aren't lined up perfectly won't matter. I got lots of JB weld, and it's pretty hard now. I'm going to let it cure a little bit longer, obviously. But this here, this piece that I cut off originally, that took the most bonding underneath. You can't see it, to keep it supporting of the seat, because you remember one of the bolts for the seats sits on that. The only, I guess, drawback that I would say is earlier on I should have marked how this lines up, because it's very possible the bolt might slightly be off at an angle or not quite right to fit. If I can't get it in there, I'm just going to leave that bolt out. But again, having 3 out of the 4 will hold that seat just fine for me, and I'll call this a project. Appreciate you watching. I hope this has helped people that want to save time and money like myself, and don't have really the means to drop a tank or a nice lift in their garage to do so.